When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome to the PR Training Lab. If this is your first time listening to one of these episodes, this is where I take one lucky runner and I make a custom training plan completely free right here, recorded live on the podcast. These have been some of my most popular episodes where you get to know me a little better, get to know my process. I'm just talking into the mic, no script, no real planning for this. I just do it off the top of my head, just as if I was doing it for any one of my athletes. So if you would like to enter to win your own free custom training plan, it's super simple. All you have to do is first write an Apple Podcast review. This is how people find the show. This is how we're able to make this show every week. Even if you're an Android user, you can make an Apple Podcast review. Just Google how to do that. Then after that, you want to go to theplantedrunner.com/PR lab. That's where you can enter and fill out your form. Tell me all about yourself and the race that you are training for. Or if you don't want to wait for some contest to win, you can go to theplantedrunner.com/plans and just get your plan today. Now, if you are listening to this episode when it comes out in July of 2025, I am running a special. And it's right on the homepage of my website, so theplantedrunner.com. You can get a gift certificate for a plan for this fall or to use whenever you like. And they're 15% off right now, just for the month of July 2025. So go to theplantedrunner.com and use the code July25. All right. I ask every runner who enters this contest and every runner that joins my team or wants a custom training plan a bunch of questions. This is how I can get to know you a little better, get to know what you're training for, get to know your experience, and lots more. So I've included the questions that I ask each runner in the show notes so that you can follow along. All right, today's winner is Cierra, and she is training for the Philadelphia Marathon. A little background about the Philadelphia Marathon. Last year in 2024, it was the 8th largest marathon in the U.S., and it was also the 8th largest in 2023. About 7% of the finishers qualified for the Boston Marathon last year, so it's a pretty good one for running a fast course. But it's not perfectly flat, because if you look at more statistics, it gives the Philadelphia Marathon the 224th highest percentage of Boston Marathon qualifiers in the U.S. So definitely not the fastest course out there, but still pretty good. If you go to findmymarathon.com, it will give it a course score of 98.17. So 100 is the best. So 98 is pretty good, but it's only the 306th fastest marathon in the US. So there are some hills. You know, how they figure out whether it is a fast course or not is not just about if it's flat. Yes, that's important. Downhill gets more points. So if it's downhill but not too steep, that will get more points. but it's also about the typical race time, the temperature, humidity levels. And Philly usually is within the ideal range. So that's why it is a good course, but not the fastest course. So we'll go over that in just a little bit with Cierra. But let's learn a little bit more about her first. Cierra is only 26 years old. So in running terms, or at least marathon terms, an absolute baby in the sport. So it's always really exciting when I get some serious runners who are in their 20s, because it just means, they have so much potential, so far to go in building endurance. But on the other hand, they also tend to push it a little harder too, which means they could be on the road to injury. So we do want to kind of pull the reins back on some of these young guns, because you just want to keep running for a long time. Hopefully that's the goal. So the Philadelphia Marathon is November 23rd, 2025. And she is looking to maintain an 8-minute or an 8:08 minute per mile pace. For those of you in the metric part of the world, that is a 5:03 per kilometer. And that works out to be a 3:33 marathon. So pretty quick marathon pace that she is looking for. So let's see what she's done in the past and see if that seems realistic. We'll get there in just a minute. How long has Cierra been running regularly? She just wrote yes. So we don't know how long, but she just says yes, she has been running regularly. She works in miles. So the next question is about her recent races. And when I say recent, I mean 6 to 12 months. If you ran a marathon 5 years ago, that's not relevant to what your current fitness is. The reason I'm asking for races is because I'm looking for your current fitness. So if you don't have a race, then that is recent, then we want to kind of estimate your current fitness. You might go out and run a mile as fast as you possibly can, or you might sign up for a 5K. We want something to gauge how fit you are right now, not how fit you were 10 years ago. So we really want to kind of estimate the fitness and kind of see where you are. With the marathon, it's more than just fitness. It's about experience and strategy and all of that. So even if your fitness stays relatively flat, if your experience and your strategy get better and better, you can improve quite a bit in the marathon. So let's see what Cierra has to say here. She says, my first marathon was in November of 2023, and she got a 3:38. Okay, so not too far off the 3:33 that she wants now. Then my next marathon in June 2024 was 4:02, and I felt like I blew up. I went out too fast and I paid for it. Okay. Then she says this past May 2025, she ran an 8K in 37:13, which works out to be 7:29 per mile or 4:39 per kilometer. And she also ran a 20K in 1:43. That works out to be 8:19 per mile or 5:09 per kilometer. Okay, so let's kind of piece this out. So a 20K is almost a half marathon. A half marathon's about 21K. So she did 20K at a pace of 8:19. And now she wants to run 42K, a full marathon, in 8:08. So she's trying to get faster at the marathon than she is at the half marathon. That usually is an issue, but we don't know what happened there. In May, she obviously raced twice. And maybe it was hot. We don't know the conditions. We do know that she has the talent. She has the speed in her legs to do a 3:38 marathon. So, and with her age, we're hoping that she is improving. And the race in 2024, which was 4:02, that sounds like it was a strategy mistake. She went out too fast and she paid for it. So we're wondering what's going on here. Why is a 26-year-old getting slower, it seems? Well, let's see if we can find out. Next, I asked her how many miles does she typically run in a week. She said 45 to 55 miles. In metric, that's 72 to 88 kilometers. What is the highest amount of weekly mileage she's ever run? And how long ago was that? 70 miles last May. So 2024, she's running 70 miles a week. That's 112 kilometers. That is high mileage. That is definitely high mileage. I know if you follow elites, you're reading that they're running 90, 100, 120. Some of these guys are running, and that you might have in your head as high mileage. Well, for us mere mortals, high mileage is really in the 60s and 70s for sure. So anything over 100 kilometers a week, that's high mileage for the vast majority of people. 99% of the people. Like, get rid of the elite people. 70 miles is a lot. And to some extent, running that much is really helpful if your body's feeling good, if you're still progressing. The more running, the better you get at running, the more efficient you get at running. But at a certain point, when you're running that much, you are sacrificing something else, and that is usually speed, because simply by the time you're spending running that many miles, you're not getting recovery. So you're not going to be as sharp in your speed work if you're constantly running that many miles. Now, if you've been running for years and years and years and you've crept up your mileage slowly over the years, your body is going to be really used to running that much mileage, that much time on your feet. But if you're not ready for it, it can actually detract from what you're trying to do. So be careful with high mileage. I personally did great with higher mileage, but I got to a point where I wasn't breaking through my plateaus. And it wasn't until I cut back my mileage that I actually saw the results that I was looking for. So if you are running high mileage like this, I would say take a good look at that. Let's see if it's serving you. Let's see if you are really recovering, if you're really feeling good. If your race times are getting slower, hint, hint, you might be running too much. You might be overtraining too much. It could be all sorts of other things. It could be nutrition. It could be lots and lots of things. But when our race times are going in the wrong direction, we really need to look at some factors of why they are. So again, this was May of 2024. So this is a year ago that she was doing this. We don't really know what she's been doing lately. She says 45 to 55 miles lately, but she hasn't run a marathon yet this year in 2025. So I would say I would prefer to keep her mileage a little bit lower than this peak of 70 miles because look, it didn't work out. But, maybe it didn't work out because of her strategy. We don't know exactly, but those are some things to think about. Which days of the week do you currently run? She has picked every day except for Friday and Sunday. She likes to run her long run on Saturday. So now, if you've been listening to my show for a long time, you know that I like runners to run the day before the long run. I think it's incredibly important because it's a great way to simulate more miles on your long run without actually running that many more miles. Now, if you're running distances shorter than the marathon distance, it's not quite as important that you do that. But anything from the marathon and up, or if you're a half marathoner in the 2.5 to 3 hour range and up, you're going to want to break up the long run over 2 days. So you're really going to want to simulate that because at a certain point, you're not getting the benefits of running longer. You'll get far more benefits by stimulating your metabolism twice over 2 days than just dragging along for hours on end. I have a lot more about that on my website. I've had a whole post. I've done podcasts about the steady before the long run. If you want to check out that post, go to theplanedrunner.com, steady-long-run, I believe is the URL. And if it's not, just Google it. It's something like that. And you can learn more about the science of why running the day before your long run can be very, very valuable. It's not essential. If you can't, you can't. But if you can, I highly recommend it. Let's see how long her average or most recent long run. She said she ran 16 miles in June of 2025. So she submitted this a few weeks ago. We're in July now. So maybe she's in the 16 range, which I think is a little bit early to be going that long right now. Remember, her race is not until November. So we don't need to have these super duper long runs right now. We don't need to be just breaking down our body that much, because if we do this, we're going to be peaking too early. Now, anything I say here, of course, there's exceptions. 16 miles for an elite is going to take a couple hours. 16 miles for a slower runner might take more than 3 hours. She's a faster runner for a recreational runner. So 16 miles, she's going to get in under 3 hours for sure. But do we need to be running that kind of mileage 4, 5, 6 months before our marathon? I would argue no. I think that we should be working on speed, and she should have shorter long runs at this point. But now that we're moving into marathon training period, she's going to be right on target, but she's not starting at the highest level of speed that she could be right now. What would you say is a very easy effort, relaxed pace for an average run? This pace is so slow that you could talk the entire time almost as easily as walking. She says 9:45 to 10:15 per mile. So in metric, that is 6:04 to 6:22 per kilometer. This is probably a good, easy pace for her. I would say we could slow it down even more. But as long as Cierra, if you are talking the whole time, or you could talk the whole time to a running buddy, if you could sing along with your music, if you could argue with your favorite podcaster, those are very good tests of easy runs. Another quick test that you can do is to close your mouth, not the whole time. Some people can nose breathe the entire time they're running easy. I think that's a little bit of extra credit if you can do that. I don't think it's necessary. But if you can do it for a few minutes per mile or a few minutes per kilometer, that really shows that it's easy running. Easy running is the bread and butter. Easy running, about 80% of a marathoner's or a half marathoner's time on your feet should be easy running. That's because that is using the aerobic system, developing the aerobic system most efficiently. So with oxygen, we want to make sure all the oxygen possible can get to our muscles to power our muscles to run well. It makes running easier, makes running fast longer, easier. So I know it seems counterintuitive that you have to run slow to run fast eventually, but it is the truth. Yes, you need to have some fast running sprinkled in there, but if you do nothing but easy running, you've got 80% of what you need. All right, when does she like to run her speed days? She wrote Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday. So she is going to be a Saturday runner. I prefer Saturday runners to run their speed days Mondays and Wednesdays. 2 days after the long run is the best way to spread out your speed day and your long run. So there's 7 days in a week. I wish there were 8 days in a week just so we could make things even, but we have an odd number of days in a week, and that's the way the world works. If you have a schedule where days of the week don't mean anything, you can go on a 10-day schedule. You can go on a 6-day or an 8-day schedule, but the majority of us live by the 7-day-a-week calendar. And so if you're running along on Tuesday, that means you've got a speed day on Monday. You've got a speed day possibly on Wednesday. Friday is going to be the day before your long run. So you're either running easy, potentially doing some strides, or you are running a steady run, which is roughly marathon pace, give or take. It's a medium paced run that is shorter than your long run. Again, to simulate fatigue, to create fatigue, to simulate a longer long run on Saturday. What day of the week do you take a full rest day? She takes Friday. So again, we talked about this. I'd prefer she not take Friday, but If she has to take Friday, we can work with that. Maybe she does the steady on Thursday. Maybe that means she doesn't quite get the 2 days of speed a week. Or maybe it means we are a little creative somewhere else. If she could move the long run to Sunday and then have that Saturday to run easy, she could keep Friday. So there are things that we can do. Now, if Cierra absolutely needs to keep this schedule, let's check. Oh, she says she's flexible. So no, I want to change it for her if she is flexible. So ideally, I would have her run long Sunday if she wants to keep Friday off, or we can go ahead and keep Saturday as the long run, Monday and Wednesday as the speed day, and we'll give her Thursday off instead of Friday. What are Cierra's favorite kinds of running workouts? She says long, slow runs and Yasso 800s. Okay, long, slow runs, great. We love those for marathoners. Yasso 800s, let's talk about that for just a minute. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent on this, but Bart Yasso, famous running coach, he came up with the Yasso 800s, and it is supposed to be a predictor of your marathon time. So if you can run a bunch of 800s, and how many reps of the 800 is going to depend on the type of runner. But let's say you run your 800s in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. That means that you can run a marathon in 3 hours and 30 minutes. I call BS on this, okay? Because there's some correlation, but there is no causation of this. An 800 meter is nothing like a marathon. So there are going to be people who are very good at 800s who cannot translate that to the marathon, and vice versa. Now, it's just really a coincidence that this kind of lines up sometimes for some runners, but for other runners, it's way off. The other problem with Yasso 800s is that they're not marathon specific. There's nothing wrong with doing them. I've done them before. They're fun. It's kind of fun to wish and hope that your 800 time could translate to your marathon time. It's a fun workout. I get it, but it's not very specific to the marathon. I will assign some 800s in a marathon buildup, but not anywhere near the race, maybe 3 months out, but I'm not going to be doing it 2 months out. So you can look up the Yasso 800 if you're curious about it, but don't think that it's a marathon workout. It is absolutely not a marathon workout. It does not predict your marathon, and it's not actually great training for the marathon. So off my tangent on the Yasso 800s, fun workout, not applicable to marathoners. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. The Planted Runner is sponsored by Liquid IV. I know most runners dread summer running, but I've got to tell you, I love it. The long days, the lack of layers of gear, it's just my favorite. But of course, I make it a priority to stay hydrated, and this year, that means Liquid IV. Summer is the perfect time to try their new Arctic raspberry flavor. Plus, Liquid IV has sugar-free solutions powered by Live Hydra Science for smart hydration. You can pre-hydrate before your run, add a stick to your bottle to carry with you, and naturally, you'll want to have it to add to ice-cold water after your run. Just one stick and 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone. Squeeze the most out of your summer with Liquid IV. Tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com and get 20% off your first order with code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code PLANTED at liquidiv.com. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. What are your least favorite kinds of running workouts, or what do you struggle with most on the runs? She said her least favorite workouts is mile repeats and long tempos. Oh, you're definitely my kind of girl, Cierra. Mile repeats are so hard. They are so hard. They should be hard if you're a marathoner. They should be hard for anybody. So a mile repeat sounds self-explanatory. You repeat a mile as hard as you can, just about. And a mile or which is 1,609 meters, is a really, really long interval. So you're going to be running it at a very, very high pace, and then you get some time to breathe in between, and then you have to do it all over again. So this is one of the most difficult workouts for a long distance runner. It's difficult for sprinters too. It's difficult for everybody. Maybe not milers. Maybe they enjoy it. I don't know who enjoys a mile repeat workout. Oof. Super, super hard, but they are really, really good at working on your stamina, which is speed plus endurance. This is high end stamina work, and they're very hard. So they work on your VO2 max or your ability to use oxygen. So good workout, probably, again, something I would put towards the beginning of a marathon cycle, not super specific for marathoners close to the race, but still a very tough and a very good workout. Long tempos, however, that is very specific. We love tempos for marathoners. So a tempo, if you're unfamiliar, is something that you are at a medium pace, medium high pace. My definition of tempo is the highest pace that you can sustain for 40 to 60 minutes. So for elite marathon men, that's half marathon pace. For fast recreational runners, that's 10K pace. For some people, that's going to be 5K pace. Now, we're not going to have you run the fastest that you can run for 40 minutes for a 40-minute long tempo. That's way too hard. So a tempo is going to kind of be a loose definition. We want you to be running something at a medium high pace for a long time. So long time for you could be a couple miles, could be many miles, but this is going to be an uncomfortable effort by the end. It's definitely not redlining. You're definitely not, racing your heart out, but this is challenging, and it's something that you need to sustain for a long time. And this is something that is really going to help you with your marathon effort. So much faster than marathon pace, but you're running it for a lot shorter time. So definitely going to have tempos for most marathoners, most weeks. Some runners, I will give only 1 day of speed work. For intermediate or above advanced marathoners, you're definitely getting 2 days of speed work a week. You'll have one track style workout and one tempo style workout. Then you might have something in your long run to make it a little spicier, but tempos are bread and butter for marathoners. So hopefully we can find a way to make them a little more tolerable for you, Cierra, because we need to do them. All right. What kind of non-running physical activities or cross-training do you do each week, and when? So Cierra does yoga once a week, usually on the weekends. Love yoga for runners. Once a week is typically fine for a marathoner. She bikes to work, but not more than 1 hour a week. Biking can be great. It is a good way to boost your aerobic fitness without the pounding that you would find in running. Occasional spin class once or twice a month. Again, that's biking. Spin classes come in all sorts of different forms. So in the middle of marathon training, I don't want you to be doing any high effort spinning, but low effort spinning or biking as kind of a recovery activity is great. She says she was weightlifting on Mondays and Wednesdays from June 24 to December of 24, but then she lost her gym membership and haven't gotten a new one. But she's moving into a new apartment building on July 1st and plan to strength train twice a week. Okay, yay. How awesome is it to have a gym in your apartment or in your house? That is perfect. You do not need to have a gym membership or a gym. You can absolutely get strong at home if that's what you're into. It takes you should invest in some kind of weights if you're going to be doing it at home. But if you really can't afford it, pick up things that are heavy. There's lots of things that are heavy around your house. I know a lot of people got creative during COVID when weights were unavailable or too expensive, or they just couldn't get any weights. So lots of heavy things around your house. You can be creative. You can do body weight work, but I do assign body weight work occasionally for my runners, but I would say that for the most part, you are going to want to incorporate weight lifting. It is something that, yes, you can get lots of resistance with your own body. Push-ups, sit-ups, and pull-ups are all very challenging exercises that only use your body weight. So just because it's body weight does not mean it's not challenging. But I would argue that squats, deadlifts, that kind of thing, you're definitely going to want to use some weight to make it harder and make it more efficient. So that's great that Cierra has a gym in her building. What are your biggest struggles with nutrition? She says late night cravings and always needing something sweet. Okay, let's talk about this. So late night cravings, that could be she simply doesn't eat enough. Now, if she's running 70 miles a week or even 55 miles a week, you need to be eating enough to sustain your training. You need to sustain your health first and foremost, but to sustain your training. So if she's not eating enough, she risks all sorts of things happening. Injuries, weaker bones, or simply not improving, just simply not having enough gas in the tank to do your workouts well and strong and to grow your muscles. If you're not eating enough calories, you cannot grow muscle. That is absolute physics. You need to be eating enough for your training. You need to be eating enough to build muscle, especially when you're in between cycles before marathon training starts. So if you are craving something at night, if you are hungry, eat. Okay. Now, the one thing that I can say is what a lot of people do, especially if they're worried about body image, maybe you have a few extra pounds that you're not happy with. If you are trying to restrict your calories at meals, a lot of people do this. They create these really healthy meals. They try to only eat a small portion of these really healthy meals because they don't want to overeat. And then they get hungry and they binge because they are under-eating the healthy stuff, which means they typically binge the unhealthy stuff. A lot of this happens at night. And part of the reason is we've spent our willpower for the day. We have already done all sorts of good, wholesome things all day long. And by the end of the day, our brain is tired, our willpower is spent, and that cookie looks really, really good. So what I would say, if you really are craving something, look at what you're eating in the entire day. Are you eating enough? If you restrict during the day, you will binge at night. So don't restrict yourself. I'm not saying stuff yourself like it's Thanksgiving, but definitely eat a little bit more than you think you should for a while. And I bet the cravings will go away. If they don't, if you're still hungry at night, what I would recommend is having something sweet. There's nothing wrong with sweet. We are programmed through millions of years of evolution to crave sweet because that's where the sugar is. That's where the calories are. That's what we need for our big brains, right? There's nothing wrong with having a sweet tooth. So if you feel like you're eating too much junk food, which there's a place for everything in a healthy diet, but try something sweet that's more natural. Try, fruit obviously is very sweet and can crave that and can satisfy your cravings. One thing that runners should be doing, especially if you feel like you are not recovering well, if you're tired, if you aren't eating enough, is have something with protein at night. So maybe you have a protein shake, maybe you mix it up with fruit, have a smoothie before you go to bed. You can make it sweet. And maybe that'll be enough to satisfy your sweet tooth. But also there's some evidence that if you do have protein before you go to bed at night, it can help with muscle synthesis. So it can help build your muscles while you sleep. So there is nothing wrong necessarily eating at night, but it's usually an indication that you're not eating enough during the day. Now, if we're talking about mindless eating, if we're talking about emotional eating, if we're talking about just eating because it's habit, those are some psychological issues that you might want to look at, journal about, talk about, maybe see a registered dietitian about. But if it's simply a physical craving, let's look at what we're eating during the day first. I'll be back with more from the PR Training Lab right after this. This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and welcome back to the PR Training Lab. What are your biggest struggles mentally when it comes to success and performance? And Cierra says, I don't want to get my hopes up during training and then not succeed or reach my goal, like in June 2024. Maybe I need help setting realistic goals and having a backup plan. Okay. I get this so deeply. Yes, you want to have big goals. Absolutely. You want to have big goals, but you should have other goals too. So have an A goal. So your A goal is 333, but have some B goals too. Wouldn't it be great just to do better than the 402 when you blew up? So part of what happened, and I don't know exactly what happened, but she says she went out too fast and she blew up. So she had to walk or she had a really tough time. So part of reaching your goals in a marathon is to hold back at the beginning so that you can be strong at the end. So a big part of what is going to help Cierra do better, even if she does not level up her fitness, is simply strategy. Okay. It's simply being disciplined enough to hold back when you're feeling good and push hard when you're feeling bad. That really is the essence of the marathon right there. It's to save your effort at the beginning so you can spend it at the end. I know a lot of people get nervous about this. They're like, oh gosh, if I go out too slow, I am never going to reach my goal. And sure, that is true in theory, but I would say the opposite is far more true. People go out too fast. It is universal that people go out too fast. So now, Cierra, you are nervous about it and you're afraid the pendulum's going to swing the other way, that you're going to go too slow. Well, we have to look at spending our effort wisely because we only have so much effort in us. If we spend it all at the beginning, we are going to not succeed at the end. So let's have some goals that are time goals at first. So we have our A goal, 333. Maybe our B goal is our old PR, which was 338. And maybe the C goal is just doing better than the race where you blew up. What was that? That was 402, I believe, somewhere in there. Yeah, 402. So maybe those are our time goals right there. Now, let's not stop there. Let's have some goals that have nothing to do with time because let's be real. In a marathon, we're putting a lot of eggs in one basket. What if it's hot? What if you don't feel so good? What if you mess something up with your nutrition? What if something stressful happens in your life? What if you get injured a month before and you're building back up? What if? All these things that are out of your control. The numbers that you want, they are not necessarily achievable, no matter what number you have, whether it's realistic or not. We are not going to know if it's realistic until we are on race day. We can have some guesses. We can have some very educated guesses of what's realistic and what's not. But we have to detach ourselves from the results if we want to really get the process right. So if we get the process right, we are so much more likely to get the results we want. If we're focused on the results, that's not going to help us do the job that will get us the results, right? So let's have some process goals. This is super, super important. So one of Cierra's process goals is don't go out too fast. All right. So if nothing else happens during this race, Cierra, I want you to run that first 5K smart. Do not go out too fast. And then the next 5K all the way to the halfway point. So if you're at the halfway point and you are still feeling in control, you have won. So no matter what happens in the second half, if you run the first half well, there are so many wins there that you are going to take to your next marathon. So maybe Philly is not going to be this big breakthrough. I hope it is, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's going to be the redemption run that is a stepping stone to the next one or the next one. That's going to be an incredible breakthrough PR. So let's focus on getting that process right. And this is going to involve fueling correctly and definitely pacing. If it's hot, you're going to have to take your expectations and your paces way, way, way down. And you're going to have to look at the marathon like it's a puzzle. And which pieces of the puzzle are you going to get right? Whether you put it all together and have this perfect finished puzzle at the end, we don't know. But let's work on the process. Let's work on the things that you want to get right that are part of your strategy. Okay. And if you can do that, you're going to find lots of wins in this race. And so that is the most important thing, are these process goals. And we can back that out, not just the race itself. We can take our process goals throughout training. What do you need to do this week that is going to be a win? What do you need to do this day that is going to be a win? Process goals are the most important thing because the results, honestly, we're not in control of. Okay. And if you are pinning your hopes and you're pinning your identity to something that's out of your control, I promise you that it's setting yourself for disappointment. We're only on this planet once, right? And so I don't want to pin my hopes to something that I can't control. I'm pinning my hopes on things that I can control. What are you hoping to gain or learn in this training cycle? Cierra says, I'm hoping to dial in my nutrition better and use carbs to really power me through the hard workouts and the big race. Hallelujah. Yay, carbs. Okay. This may have been my reason for having a tough race in June 2024 because I was fueling with go-go squeeze and water only. Aha. Okay. I have not found some gels, a drink picks, and I have some cool gels, a drink mix, and a backpack with a bladder that I'm excited to use. Okay. All right. So if you're not familiar with Go-Go Squeeze, that's basically applesauce. So I don't know how much applesauce you would need to fuel a marathon, but I'm guessing it's a lot. Nothing wrong with fueling yourself naturally with whole foods if your stomach can handle it. But the problem is the majority of people cannot handle it. There is fiber in apples and that can upset your stomach. So you're unlikely to hit the targets for carbohydrates in your race if you're only fueling with applesauce. So what are the guidelines for nutrition during a marathon? 30 to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. And at 4 calories per gram, that is a whole lot of food per hour. You should be fueling every 30 minutes with a minimum of 15 to 30 grams of carbohydrates. So 30 times 4 is 120. So 120 calories of carbohydrate per hour is the bare minimum. I have not done the math with Go-Go Squeeze, but I'm guessing she did not fuel herself nearly enough. And then at the 90 gram, multiply that by 3, we're talking almost 400 calories, right? Anyway, double check the math on that. But 30 to 90 grams, 90 grams is so much. Do not go out there and try to eat 90 grams per hour. You're going to have to build up to this. Your stomach is going to have to be trained just like your legs. So yeah, let's try out the new gels. Let's try out the drink mix. The backpack, you can train with a backpack or a hydration bladder, but be sure that you can use it during the race if you want to use it during the race. Many of the big races do not allow backpacks ever since the bombing in Boston in 2013. So make sure if you're thinking about using it during the race, make sure you are allowed to use it. I do not recommend using backpacks or bladders in races where you are trying to go very fast because that is just too heavy. It will slow you down. So I would recommend learning to use aid stations properly and maybe carrying a little bit on you. If you are a very sweaty runner, if you lose a lot of water, perhaps carrying some of your water is worth the trade-off of carrying the extra weight. But I would say if you can get away with not carrying heavy liquids, try not to, but definitely carry lots and lots of gels. Do the math on what you need and practice every long run with lots and lots of carbohydrates. Anything else you'd like to share that would be helpful to your success? Cierra says, I've been hoarding a pair of super shoes that I bought on sale like 2 years ago, but I've been hesitant to use them because I don't want to waste them and I'm not sure I'll do well in the race. Should I incorporate these into the training cycle? Yes, use them. You absolutely use them. So super shoes, which have a carbon plate and they have big foam cushion. Yes, they do get worn out earlier than your regular trainers. So you definitely want to use them. You don't want anything new on race day, but you want to save them for your speed days or you want to save them for a couple of your long runs. You want to know that you're comfortable in them, but you'll also want to rotate them with other pairs of shoes simply for the expense of it. Super shoes are way more expensive, but if you can afford it, get a couple pairs. You definitely want to have 2 pairs of shoes, whether they're super shoes or not. If you can have more, great. You want to rotate your shoes. It gives the foam a chance to rest and has been shown to help prevent injuries. So definitely have 2 pairs of shoes or more. And yes, I understand that you want to save them for a special occasion, but you're special right now, Cierra, so use them. And that money's already spent. So that money's already gone, right? So I would say you want to put, if you have 1 pair of shoes that you're saving for the race, I would say you want to put about 50 miles on them. Maybe give or take 10 miles in either direction before race day. You don't want to really do more than that if you want them to do well. This obviously is a generalization and some shoes are going to last longer than others, but use your shoes. That's why you bought them, right? And if you can afford another one, great. And the other thing to note is super shoes don't work well for everyone. Some people really do better in other pairs of shoes. So try them out on a run, see how you like them. And, don't put too many miles on them if you like them, but have a few shoes in rotation. All right. So I think Cierra is going to do really, really well at Philly if she can have a good training cycle. She has some good luck on race day. I think what's more important than the actual number of how she does, remember, there are some hills in Philly, so this is not necessarily the fastest course in the world. But I think what we really need to dial down is nutrition and race strategy for Cierra. That is going to be something that she can take into her next marathon, even if it's not this one. But I think she has tons and tons of potential. So I wouldn't say, hey, you've got to have a PR. You've got to have this result. I would look at this race as a learning experience of how you can be as strategic as possible, how you can run the smartest race possible. Let the chips fall where they may. I'm hoping that you have a great result from it, but no matter what the result on the clock, if you can really start to feel the nuances, understand the strategy of the marathon, learn the science of the marathon, that is how you become a better marathon. It's not just fitness alone. This is a lot to do with your nutrition, your strategy, and of course, your preparation. So I'm looking forward to making a plan for Cierra that I hope will take her to the finish line faster than ever. All right, that brings me to the end of this episode of the PR Training Lab. I like to do these roughly once a month, give or take. I throw them in when I can. If you want me to make a plan for you, you can enter to win. There's only 2 steps and it's totally free. You first have to write an Apple Podcast review and then go to theplanetedrunner.com/PR lab. If you don't want to wait to get chosen, if you don't think you're going to be chosen, if you listen to these all the time and have already done the race that you are training for, I'm probably not going to pick that too often. So you're probably better off just getting a plan yourself. You can go ahead and get one at theplanetedrunner.com/plans. And again, if you're listening to this when it comes out in July of 2025, head to the homepage, theplanetedrunner.com, and you will see a discount code to get a gift certificate for a plan where you can save a little extra cash on that. Again, if you have a fall marathon coming up, now's the time to get specific about your training, and I hope I can help. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can enter to win a free custom training plan for your next race and get featured on the show. Just write an Apple Podcast review and enter at theplanetedrunner.com/PR lab. Of course, reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next because I read every single one. Have a great run today.